These are strange days for football, not just because of Chelsea's delicious meltdown. Half-time score is, I think, Spurs 0, Chelsea 0. The world that we grew up in of Bovril, hooliganism, male domination, has given way to all-seater gentrification, female commentators, and even the prospect of a gay footballer willing to come out, apparently. Has all this progress been a good thing? Has some vital essence of masculinity been diluted? Has a place for men to vent who they are and their feelings around other men turned into just another form of corporate entertainment? Well, to kick this around, we're playing a 3 up front formation. Nick has just joined us. Nick Makoha is a playwright. He's director of the Youth Poetry Network, and his journey has gone from Uganda via Saudi Arabia, via Kenya to the Emirates, and a late morning. You're all right, Nick? Has it been a problem to get here this morning?
Yes, there has.
Okay, you have a glass of water, relax, you're in good company. Lee Dema runs the St Matthew's project in South Brixton, which provides free football coaching to young people in the area. Lee, what's been the greatest moment you've experienced on a football pitch?
On the football pitch?
Yeah.
What, with the kids? Probably once when we won a cup on Hackney Marshes, and we took some parents along on a minibus, because parents don't normally attend our games, so we tried to get them over there, and it was one in extra time with the last kick of the game, and all the parents, everyone ran on the pitch. Probably that's the best memory.
Could you have been a pro? Could
No.
you have made it?
Definitely not, no.
Paul Lyalls, another poet, performer, writer who works closely with schools, and I believe has been the big friendly poet in residence at the Roald Dahl Museum.
The BFP.
But I also believe you are the only one amongst us who's actually played at Wembley.
That's right. In 2007, I was poet in residence for the year for the London Borough of Brent, London's 5th coolest borough. And I, as part of that residency, I got to perform my poetry on the pitch at Wembley Stadium, which was quite cool.
Okay,
He got me into the Guinness Book of Records, actually, as being the only poet to perform on the pitch at Wembley. He got me 2 records, and the second record was for the smallest ever audience at Wembley Stadium as well.
Which was?
About 500 people.
Okay. Nick, now we've given you time to recover. Your greatest moment on the terraces or on the pitch?
Well, recently I've just watched Arsenal win the last game for qualification to the Champions League, and I think I went pretty nuts then. But I think seeing our team win this year, the Community Shield, and I'm hoping that we could win the Premiership. So fingers crossed, 4 o'clock this afternoon.
Okay.
You'll catch me in front of a TV cheering on Arsenal.
Okay, the ever-optimistic Arsenal fan. Let's get a sense of the footballing world that we grew up in, that kind of life before Stadia came anywhere near a prawn sandwich. Paul, life as a teenager on the Leeds United supporters bus in the mid-1970s. For those of us who weren't there, give us a sense of what that would have been like.
Well, it was a sort of a very interesting, rapid introduction to being a bloke, I guess. Coming from a small town in East Yorkshire, my dad would never take me to football. He didn't like it, said it was a waste of money and time. And he said when I had a job, I could go. So at the age of 14, I got a job in the local supermarket stacking shelves, and I joined the Hull Supporters Club and got on a coach for the very first time that came through Goole in East Yorkshire on its way to Leeds. And as a 14-year-old, got onto this kind of very, very testosterone-heavy, hard-drinking coach. And so I got to go to my first game. I got my first taste of being drunk. And also I was forced to take part in the sweepstake, which was, I think, £1 or something, and everybody had to put their money into a hat. And a team was drawn on the way out, which was my team. And I came back with about £50, drunk. My dad talking about what a waste of time and money football was. and me passing out on the sofa with pound notes falling out of my pockets. Actually quite enjoying a 0-0 draw with Coventry in front of about 12,000 people. So it was a turning of the page.
Yes. In terms of Lee, the sort of sights, the sounds, the smells of going to West Ham as a kid, what was that like for you?
Well, for me, I grew up in Tulse Hill and Brixton, South London. So I was given a West Ham duffel bag by someone. I can't remember, and I just wanted to sort of go and see them. But in those days, this was the early 70s, and football hooliganism was rife. No one wanted to go over to West Ham. It was sort of a place you didn't go. And I went. I was 12, and I just jumped on a tube, and I went on my own. And to me, I can remember it now. It was 18 stops from Victoria. It was like going to the other side of the world, and I was just fascinated. And from that day, I was hooked. So West Ham was a pretty grim place as well back in the 70s. There was no Olympic Stadium, no rubbish like that. But it had a bad reputation, and it was quite a fearsome place.
I mean, did you do your growing up there? Did you do some growing up?
Yeah, I mean, in my day, but they talk about football hooligans and that it was a minority. But as I remember it, it was very much a big thing. It's all we talked about in school, football hooligans, and I didn't have a dad around, so I think I used to look at some of these blokes at West Ham like sort of father figures, big brothers, if you like. I mean, Billy Bonds was my favourite player, if anyone remembers Billy Bonds. I looked to him, I think, as a kind of father figure. He was, as a fearless player. But they were sort of frightening times. I first saw West Ham fans at a Crystal Palace match when I was about 11, and that's the first time I'd ever seen anyone hit a policeman. We used to get in trouble, but you didn't hit policemen. And I saw this man just knock a policeman's spark out, and I just thought, what are these type of people, But again, it was that very macho world where it was quite frightening. And you just sort of wondered where these blokes had come from.
Did you get drawn into the violence yourself?
I think we all did, yeah. I think, I wouldn't say I was a major hooligan, but everyone tagged along. I'd say I was an hanger-on.
Yeah.
It was all, going up and down the country, going to places like Leeds, and it was exciting.
Will Danny Dyer be playing your life story soon?
No, I hope not. Please God, no.
Nick, where does football sit in the heart of a Ugandan childhood?
Well, I was raised in Peckham, and I think all the boys of my age, boys and girls actually, to be fair, were we all kind of had people that we looked up to. So I think you can tell a person by what kind of heroes they were throwing themselves against. So I come from the Henry era. There were people who were from the Sol Campbell era or the Garth Crooks era, and that would kind of decide which football team you aligned yourself to, or if you're, or if it was, with Liverpool, it would have been Barnes in my day. So I think, as a kid, as jumpers for goalposts, sort of thing in the park. It was kind of a way of putting on an identity where you could be seen as a hero in sometimes what were, for want of a better word, grim environment that you were living in. So that's kind of how football came to me, and it was a way of kind of bonding for me, being from another country, from another culture, slowly losing the use of my language because I wasn't speaking the language. There were no other Ugandans that I was sharing my language with. So football became an easy access tool to fit in when I was younger.
But did you find it something that you could embrace, or was there a kind of, I'm not sure if I'm going to get racism when I go to the ground?
Well, I never actually got to go to a game as a child. I mean, I got to play for my school and stuff, which was a way in. So football for me was always, there are two levels of watching football for me as a child. One was kind of watching it on Match of the Day sort of thing, and then the other was that World Cup fever when I think everyone suddenly becomes a football fan. And the world seems like a better place inside of the World Cup environment. And for a person who comes from another country, you feel included in that moment because everyone seems to want to accept the identity of, oh, I'm British, I'm American, or whatever that is. It seems that identities are accepted when you put it through the filter of a World Cup. So I always kind of like that that sense of feeling connected to something, you know, and that's what football did for me.
I mean, Paul, is it tempting to romanticise the era that we've been talking about growing up in, when, you know, football had a bit of edge to it. You know, it wasn't this sort of gentrified place. There was a bit more attitude to it, or is this a better time to be a fan?
I think there's always an element of romanticising any era, any sort of period from back in the day, whether it's football or music or fashion or whatever it may be. And I think people always have these kind of ideas in their heads, whether it had a harder edge to it, or whether it was somehow more, I don't know, a more sort of vibrant experience. Is very much up in the air, because maybe the standard of football is better now, and maybe the standard of facilities is better now. Maybe has the passion diminished? Is the passion greater? They're really hard things to kind of quantify. I think there's an element of this kind of grittiness, but we talk about it, you know, in sort of very rose-tinted, you know, sort of with vision, a rose-tinted vision. And in all honesty, some aspects of it, it's good that it's behind us. The sort of the crudeness. You can either call it edge, or you can call it crudeness, or sort of falling down facilities. I'm not sure. But I know the prices were better.
Yes,
that's for a fact.
But you both talked. You and Lee both talked about almost like a kind of male coming of age, where, you know, you were on that bus. Being plied with booze by other Yorkshiremen. You know, Lee's kind of getting on the tube and meeting other guys who are kind of taking, you know, under the wing. Would that sort of relationship still happen in today's grounds?
Probably, but in a different way. And I think it'd be a slightly different. It'd have a shift. I think there has to be a shift, but I think that's true about most things, how things move on through the decades, through the generations. There's a sort of things happening in different times. I was just saying to Lee just before we came on, a guy I do some work with Arsenal, Nick, on a Saturday called the Saturday Social, with older Arsenal fans who are no longer able to attend the game, maybe due to physical reasons. And one of the guys was saying that when he used to go as a kid, around sort of just before World War II, or just after that sort of Second World War period, that all the kids would be put to the front so they could see, and there'd be huge crowds, it'd be rammed solid, and any children who arrived late would be passed down to the front overhead, which I think is absolutely magical. You wouldn't have got that in the 70s or the 80s. You wouldn't be allowed to do that now. But for me, in terms of being a man, that's quite a sort of magical thing. To trust your children to hundreds of other people, really, hundreds of other blokes. You know, that was a sort of greater risk, and it was a much more beautiful kind of moment as well.
And, you know, I remember Leeds were quite a violent club. I was hit by a 2-pence piece at Main Road at some point in the 80s. I don't know if it was actually thrown by you or not, but thanks anyway. There was a menace to Leeds, you know, alongside other clubs. Was there something positive about that, in a kind of weird way, that it was a safe-ish place for blokes to vent what had been built up across the week in probably quite challenging jobs and economic circumstances?
Are you talking about married life now?
And working life.
Yeah, working life. I think that the tension, the atmosphere, is crucial to football. And without it, without that sort of element, then something is taken away from it. Something is taken away. It needs that slightly gladiatorial, that slightly arena feel. I really believe it's part of it, and that's why even now with so much television money, and the fans are slightly secondary now. Have been and their financial input has been minimised, and it's all down to TV money and sponsorship and global revenues and commercial aspects. Without the fans, the game wouldn't be the same. People wouldn't watch it. If you took the crowds away, the atmosphere away, and that's why local derbies are always big on the sort of TV agenda. So Newcastle, Sunderland, Celtic, Rangers, or some game that's got an edge to it is always in the sights of the TV producers, because they know it's the one that's going to capture the neutrals. There's going to be an edge to it. There's going to be something else. There's going to be some theatre, some spectacle from those tensions.
I mean, and Nick, you support Arsenal, a club who've moved stadium and are accused of lacking atmosphere. Is it just too genteel?
There are parts of it that are. I mean, you have to be honest to that. You have to hold your hands up. But my friend has season tickets, and he lets me come to some games with him. And the community is still there. And I'm just like Paul. I'm working on a project with Arsenal where we're trying to, because these are the usual tropes. The fan is a trope of football, the player. But a lot of times we kind of place the player in a kind of caricature of what we think that they are. So we think all footballers are, these kind of sexual objects, promiscuous or whatever. But there's a deeper layer to what football players are, to what fans are. I think they're typical dynamics which work, but then there are other dynamics that we can afford to look into. Like they're more for example, I'm working with Chelsea and Arsenal looking at a positive way to address racism, because a lot of times the finger is always pointed at, say, either the footballers, or the football team, when you realise actually there are more people that support Arsenal or Chelsea or any other group that's experiencing racism than there are the people who actually do the hooliganism or the racism. So if you did something that engaged them, around racism in a positive way, you'd actually have a far better reach than actually tackling just this small minority, because there's more people watching the game, as there will be today right now as Chelsea and Tottenham are playing, than there are people trying to destroy the game. Yeah. I mean,
Lee, your club's about to move, driven by kind of, I guess, it's going to move to the Olympic Stadium, it's going to potentially make more money, it's a kind of more glamorous thing, but you don't look overjoyed at the prospect. Is there something in the soul of West Ham that's going to be lost when it goes down that route?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, but it's just progress, isn't it? You could say, I mean, you can't fill Upton Park with 36,000, so how are you going to fill a stadium with 60,000? But I suppose long term, that's the way to go. As I've said earlier, there's rumours that they've changed the name to London Olympic, and I could see that happening. They've already changed the badge without telling anyone. You can see long term where it's going. It's got nothing to do with West Ham anymore. It's got nothing to do with East London. They're at Stratford, yeah, but they could be in Milton Keynes. It doesn't make any difference, I don't think.
Tell me how you've seen football change, the lives of some of the young boys that might turn up that you coach.
I wouldn't say change. I mean, the myth is that the problem we deal with kids, working with kids in Brixton, is that they genuinely believe that they're going to be a footballer. Like I dreamt of being George Best or Pele, but it was a dream. These kids, they see it as a career prospect, and because the academy system, because they're dragging in kids left, right and centre, everyone's had a trial, everyone's been in a development centre. They've all had their hopes raised, and then they'll say, well, I'm better than him. I could get in Chelsea, I could get in Arsenal. And the reality is that even if they get signed to an academy, they've got a 1 in 100 chance of becoming a professional footballer. That's not at Arsenal or Chelsea, that's in all 4 divisions and the conference.
But they have a genuine self-confidence that they know the odds, but they're going to make it.
Yeah, but we have to balance that, and we've actually saying that, and parents buy into it. But we had a mother who bought a pair of football boots. Some moody academy told her that if she bought these boots for 120 quid, which they were earning some money out of it, it would enhance her son's chances. She went to a loan shark and ended up owing about £3,000 for these boots, long term. The kid was nowhere near the level. I mean, that's an extreme example. But the kids we see, they're typically failing in school. Most of the kids we work with are Afro-Caribbean. They'd be 2 years advanced physically, so they're picked for athleticism. When they lose that advantage, they're often just kicked out. Failing in school, you've had 2 years down at Cobham, you come back, you're kicked out, thanks, but no thanks. And then you're told, well, now you've got to do well in school.
But what's in terms of the particular estate, what role has football had there in kind of giving the kids something to do, or giving maybe diffusing tensions?
Well, yeah, we give them something to do, yeah, and we try and mentor them. We try and, once we've got them in, like we give older kids training and stuff like that, we try and give them something positive, yeah? We can't solve gang issues. We can't get kids from another gang to come and play with us. That's not going to happen, yeah?
Have you tried?
No, well, it just won't happen, right? Not from our particular scheme. We've had 3 young men murdered down to gang violence. Yeah, we've had life-changing injuries. We've had, minimum 18-year jail terms. So we're seeing all that. Football can only do so much. If you're in a gang, a proper gang member, not just a wannabe and pretending, and you're earning money and you've got kudos and you're getting, even if you get banged up, you're still getting self-worth out of that. You're getting a name, a reputation. Football's not going to get you out of that. There's only so much you can do.
Nick, in terms of the kind of the grassroots, what potential have you seen football had to impact on people's lives and be a force for good? And what more could we be doing with it?
I've worked on a project with the Poetry Society and the Premier League. We did something for to celebrate the Christmas truce last year, and we worked with the under 11s, all the Premiership teams, and we went to Belgium, and I see your side of the story, and it's very true. You've got to have a reality check, but I think for young people who are really trying to figure themselves out in the world, football does have a lot of advantages. One of the ways of getting a young person to understand what's going on inside of them mentally is to get them to understand how their physical body works, and football will do that for you. It's also, because it's a team sport, it will also engage that. I think the issue, I'll also add just to what you were saying there, is that the issue is a lot of times football for them is a metaphor for I want a better life, but they don't know how else to articulate that. So, the easiest shortcut is to say, I want to be a footballer, when what they're really saying is, I need better financial circumstances, I want to have some status, I want to have, but there's no way of actually them for themselves articulating that to us, and then us saying, okay, well, let's find some things that you can do. Or how do you say, if you're in a gang, I really don't like the gang, but this is the only option I have, bar getting beat up or killed. So I think wherever football is, and this is why projects like yours are very much needed, wherever football is, it is at least, it can't solve the problem, but it's a doorway into having a dialogue with a young person, having them look at ways of change, because it requires discipline, because it requires constant engagement. Football has a way of touching young people in a way that many other things don't.
Is there a different way in which young boys and young girls engage with football?
Yeah, I mean, well, I have a daughter, and I mean, I actually took her to see Chelsea win the cup this year, and women's sport is it's just exploding. And I think I was watching a program the other day, and I think this sums it up. It's still new and fresh, and because the money isn't in the game as much as it is with the men, it's still for the love of the sport. And I think we must always bring it back to that. I think this is something Paul does a lot, really just get that sense of play, that sense of enjoyment, that sense of wonder, because there's something about football. I mean, one thing I love whenever you see anyone score a goal, it's just the sense of reaction that the player will have, the players on the pitch will have, the fans will have. And I always wonder, like, maybe even the ref inside is feeling pretty good, but it's this sense of joy that you every time you experience it, it seems like the best thing that ever happened in the world. And I think that bit of magic is what we're drawn to, that sense of a joy, I guess,
Paul, you hear from men who don't like football that it's a very alienating thing, and they feel very left out of a lot of conversations. They feel the need to maybe come up with not mentioning any prime ministers' names, but maybe come up with a team. They're not quite sure who they support. Do you feel that it's kind of? Do you feel for men that don't like football? Do you think they miss? Do you think that we make them feel less of a man?
It's a funny one. You're very much aware when somebody is anti-football and doesn't like it, and doesn't follow a team or has no interest in it. And yes, there's an element of feeling that somebody's been left out of a conversation, or that moment, that interaction. I won't say I don't feel for them. Not sure. I'm not sure.
Yeah, what do you guys think? Do you think we place too much on being a man that you therefore have to be into football?
I think there's definitely that tendency, but I'm okay with it. I like people who are different. I don't need everyone to be into what I'm into. But I think being in England, we live on planet football. I think England thinks it deserves football. It invented football. I mean, like I said, when I was working with the Premier League on this project, I mean, they just take over. When the Premier League comes into any space, that space belongs to them. It doesn't belong to anyone else. Like they literally took over the town where we were in. They were stopping cars, stopping traffic. So I think part of that is put on by the entity that football has become, and we're seeing that in how things are playing out with Sepp Blatter and all of that. But it's a world unto itself, and sometimes maybe it takes itself a little too seriously, and that sometimes that seriousness kind of filters into the fan who's like, oh, but I support this team, it's amazing. But really, it's a form of recreation, it's a form of engagement, it's a form of identity. And I think that's what it is for a lot of men. And it doesn't substitute who we are, but it definitely adds, but it doesn't take away from anyone who isn't that. And I think that's important to.
I think it's also a little bit of a sort of universal language between men from all different kinds of backgrounds and parts of the world even. So like, this was my first time of meeting Lee, and we could immediately strike up a conversation, couldn't we, about the good old bad old days of football and experiences and stuff. And often I think for guys it can be a little bit of a starting point, just in the same way that certain themes and topics are for other different kinds of people, or genders or whatever.
So Lee, there's a job at FIFA. If they came knocking on your door, so we love what you've done in South Brixton so much. We'd like you to be the new Sepp Blatter.
Yeah.
If you had a mandate to run world football, what would you do to it?
What would I do? I don't know. I'd invest it in schemes like ours. I think probably. I'd say yeah.
Would you
I
tackle?
think a lot more money needs to filter down. I don't know what the Premier League gives, but it's something ridiculous. A lot of that money needs to filter down.
And ticket prices, would you cap
Ticket,
them?
well, our kids, they never. I think you're getting kids now that have never been to football. A lot of our kids, they got no more chance of going to Arsenal, than I ever planned for them. You're getting people now that it's a passive sport. They watch. People watch football rather than play it. You've got kids now that, who do you support? Well, whoever I see on Sky, the top form, whatever shirt's hanging up in Sports Direct. That's who they support. The top 4 shirts hanging up and whoever's doing well. There's no like me. We're going to West Ham one day because they got a duffel bag out of jumble sale, or there's no affinity with a community. All that's gone.
It's a sport that's at the frontier of a business model, and the business model has taken over. And I think that's why we're always going to be upset, because the business model, they are seriously trying to make it's a money making machine, and as long as that stays, I think the only time we have an opportunity to change is if we can learn from what the women's game is doing. So if we can learn from how the women's game is growing and not make some of the mistakes we've already made in the men's game, there's a possibility that we can address that balance. But while it's still a commercial entity,
yes,
we're always going to be bucking up against these points of disappointment.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, Paul, goals are heaven sent.
I'm going to read this poem for you. It's a football poem that I wrote a few years ago. Speaking of we've got to do the commercial bit. I've got to do this because Nick's got the same publisher as me, and if our publisher finds out that we didn't try and sell some books on the day, then we're in for the high jump as well. So the poem I'm going to perform for you is available from this collection. I've got 5 copies of it with me today. It's a £5. I will sign books if anybody wants to take a punt, but you might find in years to come that the unsigned books are rarer. And if you don't want to buy the book, I don't want any of you to worry about me financially, because I'd like you all to know now that I've made enough money from poetry to last me for the rest of my life, providing that I die tomorrow morning about 9:30. So this is a poem called Goals Are Heaven Sent. Goodbye boring week, the dream can begin as goals bring fire to a 3 p.m. journey's end. A shimmy, a swaying of hips, the steel stand sways, the movement twists. The ball is precious in football, the feet come and go, feet that leave no footprints when they're playing in snow, feet that can turn on a coin, turn on a crowd, turn the watching world upside down. Goals are heaven sent, half chances are easy, quarter chances astound, scored by only those who wear the natural born striker's crown. The missing of an open goal becomes the unsolved mystery of the footballer's soul, burying the rebound, but the ball wanders past the post like Lazarus or some other dead man from the Bible going for a stroll. A silenced ground, a rippleless net, one to forget. No goals this week, goals are heaven sent. Saturday comes, the factory goes, the football flows, the dream can begin. If you don't score, you cannot win. Goals are heaven sent is the message carried in the home crowd's reverberating roar as they demand an equaliser, even though the opposition have yet to score. A voice with intent that's unable to relent whilst the field flows with shifting strips, dancing toes, shimmying hips, passing gifts, ball control, football that is total. The dream can begin. The steel stands sway. If you do not score, you cannot win. In football, goals are everything. Thank you.
Very good. Excellent. And thank you to Lee and Nick and Paul, and thanks all for coming along to...
Can we hear it for Tim as well?
No need to that. Thank you to everyone here.